It's a rather long-winded title, this. How do brands maximise the return on investment when managing the sponsorship of multiple sporting properties? Let's narrow it down and say, what are you looking for, Martin, when you approach a sport? What's a brand want out of a connection?
Well, we may not approach the sport may approach us. But I think in terms of, from our perspective, I think when we've engaged with the partners that we are engaged with, and the key ones for us are the Ryder Cup and the British and Irish Lions in terms of 2017. I guess it's first and foremost a fit. Is it the right fit in terms of our business, our ambition, our audience that we're trying to reach out to? And I think in terms of then the sort of checklist, it's, will it help us build the brand? So does it have the right sort of profile, visibility and associations? Will it help us engage with our clients, which are sort of often quite difficult to get to? We're primarily an institutional corporate brand. And also for us, also how does it land within the organisation? How do people within the organisation feel and buy into the idea of that association? So I think those are the areas for us in terms of, does it pay back? It's not just a pound, shillings and pence. It is, sort of a tick box really against those sort of areas.
And Claire, when you're approaching somebody like Martin, are you at the back of a long line? Is that how it works? Are you having to knock on doors?
Yeah, it's really annoying actually. Two of my commercial guys are in the audience and they have a really tough time. It's such a competitive marketplace out there at the moment, and it gets more competitive year on year that we do it. And for us at Williams, we're an independent racing team, one of the last remaining true independent teams. So we only survive in our sport if partners decide to sponsor us. So it is a really tough game out there at the moment. But we're very lucky at Williams in that we've got some great USPs that we can talk about when we're approaching brands. And I think that does stand us out in the competition. But it's a constantly evolving story for us when it comes to commercial conversations and trying to make sure that we are standing out and we are offering prospective partners something different that they're not able to find elsewhere.
We cynics in the media often think that a brand would go to a sport because the managing director likes golf and would quite fancy a round with Rory McIlroy. Got that wrong, presumably, have we? It's slightly more sophisticated.
It's a little bit more sophisticated than that. Certainly, I don't think our board generally put any fear into any golf competition anywhere in the world. I don't think they're particularly active in that particular space. I dare say it goes on. I think those days have long gone. I think in terms of certainly at elite sport, when rights holders come into the room, it's very professional. People have thought about what their story is, what the proposition is, what the mutual benefits are. So I think, the idea that it's sort of, chaps having a drink at a nice time, whilst there may be a drink at a nice time, that's, those days have long gone, I think.
You're talking about mutual benefits. You chose golf and rugby to get involved in. Mm-hmm. What are you hoping for, apart from the fact that golf and rugby tends to attract an audience that's likely to invest with your company?
Well, I mean, certainly the sport itself matters, and and certainly from a Telegraph point of view, I know you ask your readers that exact question. For a brand like us, for an investment house, what sort of sport should we be associated with? And the joint number one on that is golf and rugby. So that goes with the territory. But I think certainly I think hopefully we bring more to things than just the transaction. And I think it is a mutual exchange. I think certainly we are very conscious of who we're partnering with, and certainly the conversations I've been involved in, I think rights holders at that elite level are also very conscious about who they partner with. The sort of the name on the website or the name on the shirt matters to the rights holder, I think, because we all sort of like to keep company that feels right for us.
Claire, we're talking there about the fit working, but you also said basically you need their money. If I came with you with a shed load of money, what would you say?
That would be really nice. Do you have a shed?
I'll get my checkbook.
Yeah, please.
Have you ever been involved with someone who you thought maybe we shouldn't have been?
Yeah, I think any rights holders probably had those partners where for whatever reason, they've gone into an agreement and then they've come out of it and probably wish that they hadn't. But hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? And sometimes you're not, fortuitous enough to be in that position where you can be that selective about who you are necessarily partnering with. And Williams has gone through those kind of periods in our history, but fortunately we're not in that space anymore, and we have transformed our partner community. And that was a very specific objective of ours when we did Williams's big transformation in 2013, when we weren't doing so well. And we didn't have the best partner community then. We had a partner from Venezuela, and there were lots of politics around Venezuela, and it did push off other brands coming in to partner with Williams.
Did people actually say, well, we'd like to get involved with you, but they are involved with you and we don't want to mix it?
Probably not so specifically, but it's obvious. The American relationship with the Venezuelans is not as you'd like it to be, and so inevitably it pushed off American brands that we were potentially talking to at the time. Yeah, it did. And we talked earlier about tobacco sponsorship, when obviously Formula One was pretty much built around tobacco sponsorship. They ploughed billions of dollars into our sport for decades. And then obviously with the ban on tobacco sponsorship years ago, that probably totally transformed the landscape of partnerships in Formula One. And actually Williams was one of the first teams that decided to proactively disengage from its tobacco sponsorship. And it opened numerous doors to us that were otherwise closed, but actually we hadn't realised that they were closed until we made that decision.
I mean, there was much doom and gloom assumed would happen when tobacco sponsorship ended. But you barely missed a beat, did you?
No, yeah, you're right, we didn't. And as I said, it opened lots of doors, and we actually then went into a period in Formula One where lots of technology brands decided to partner with us. So the likes of HP, Compaq, IBM, those businesses decided to come in, and really the early 2000s were all about technology partnerships in our sport, and actually very much today that's still the case.
Martin, why do you diversify? Why don't you just stick with golf or stick with rugby?
Well, we may well do. I think those are the two at the moment. I think.
Yeah, but why don't you just stick with one of them?
Well, I think for us, there's also an opportunistic aspect to this. I mean, yes, there are lots of knocks on the door, and there are lots of conversations. And sometimes you see something you'd love to be associated with, but you don't have the opportunity. I mean, for us, something like the Lions, and I'm conscious that we have somebody from the Lions team here in the audience. It's a once in a 4-year opportunity. The Lions going down to New Zealand against the All Blacks is a once in a 12-year opportunity. So to let that pass, I think, would be too big an opportunity to walk away from. And I think in terms of, there is a capacity level, I think, within the organisation in terms of how much you can take on. This is part of our marketing mix. It's not the be-all and end-all. And I think, for us to go further would be a challenge. But I think in terms of taking on those two properties, which have got a lot of, although completely different sports, have got a lot of synergies in terms of the audience, the values, the heritage that's associated with them, are a great fit for us.
But is it like having children? Do you sort of fear favouring one over the other?
Yes, and I think there's a lot of emotion attached to any sport, and that will pervade certainly how the organisation internally reacts to the partnership, in terms of people will have their favourite child. As the person who has to manage the relationship, I of course have no favourite child.
You're completely unbiased.
No Sophie's choice.
So in terms of the amounts of money, that's clearly the first thing. You make those decisions. They're not balanced. You're not going to tell us because the Lions are here. But you make that balance within the company.
We make that balance in terms of the overall marketing planning exercise. So there's a business planning exercise in terms of what are we trying to achieve from a business growth point of view, and where are we trying to achieve that geographically or with certain segments of the market, and what does the sort of resource and plan look like to help us get there. And the sponsorship decision is part of that decision making. It doesn't sit on its own. Ultimately there becomes a capacity where we might like to say yes to some exciting opportunities, but the well is run dry.
Clive, from the other side of it, would you prefer to go with a brand who only has you, that you're the unique sporting relationship with them?
No, it depends how much money they give us. I'm talking a lot like I'm very wound up about money, but I'm not. So I think it depends. Obviously, when you have a partnership, and we have, you know, a wonderful partner community that have joined our team, and a lot of whom have been with us for many, many years, some more than 13, 14 years. So for us, it's not necessarily about how many other properties that a brand might sponsor, but it's about what they do for the team and what they can bring to us. So as long as we know and have faith that they are dedicating their resource in the way that we discussed prior to entering into a partnership, and they're giving it their full commitment to match the commitment that we give to all our partners, and that's really all that matters to us. And inevitably there are going to be crossovers perhaps between a brand's sponsorship portfolio where you can do a bit of mix and matching to gain some coverage or content or whatever that may be, you know. And with some of our partnerships in the past, we've done some really nice activations around a brand using one of our racing drivers and then going and doing something with a football player or doing something with another driver in NASCAR. And so you have some really nice content that you can mix across different sponsorship platforms if your partner does have different sponsorships with other rights holders. So it can work really nicely, but as long as you have that focus on your team, because you want to get the maximum out of that partnership for your partner.
Martin's already...
Similarly, I think in terms of, you know, as a sponsor, I mean, I think a lot of properties now will have multiple relationships. You know, if they get their planning right, that works really well in terms of getting the categories right. So certainly Ryder Cup 2014 at Gleneagles, you know, we worked very closely with other sponsors, other partners. So we ran, you know, collaborative, can't even say that word, activity in Edinburgh with EY, with Visit Scotland in terms of the local marketplace. Building towards Ryder Cup 2016 in the US, we're working with other partners there in terms of making sure that there's a degree of air traffic control going on in terms of we don't crash into each other, but more excitingly, you know, what are the opportunities that you can exploit together, because, you know, we're very different businesses.
Martin dismissed my cynicism before about what brands are looking for in their relationships. But have you ever had a situation, for instance, where you've been talking to a brand and the managing director's wife wants to have driving lessons off one of your drivers? I mean, do you get things of that kind of nature going on?
No, I think that, as Martin said, that has changed. I think with the corporate governance regulations that now businesses have to stand against, I don't think that necessarily happens. I do think Formula One used to be a sport whereby CEOs, you know, they would love coming to races, and that was one of the key drivers behind their decision making when it came to Formula One sponsorship. But actually what we're finding now is if a CEO likes Formula One, they either step away from it, any discussions that we may be having with a prospect, and let their marketing teams do it, or other C-suite execs, or they flatly refuse to do anything because they don't want to be seen to be something that they want to do from a personal angle.
It's interesting. Corporate governance has changed things, has it?
It has, and I think it's real. I mean, certainly in a business like ours, I mean, we're an institutional investor. You know, part of our remit is to, you know, call out corporate behaviour in the firms that we invest in. I think, you know, the risks would be, you know, beyond any sort of benefit you might get from any sort of sponsorship to get involved in any of that sort of old school, you know, sort of can you do me a favour stuff. So yeah, we have a very clear distance between you know, the executive team. Obviously they bring clients to actual events, but in terms of any decision making around, you know, what the sponsorship construct looks like, what the activation plan looks like, that's held very much within the sort of the marketing area.
Formula One is an incredibly technically advanced business. You know, almost to the point where you become very secretive. You daren't let people know what you're getting up to. You know, and right at the cutting edge of that, you're independent. I mean, we know that, for instance, what Mercedes does on the track, they put into their cars that they sell. You're independent from that. Do you ever go into a partnership with a brand where you're looking for them to help you?
Yeah, we do a lot of that actually now, more and more so than we've probably ever done at Williams before. As you said, we are an independent team, so our survival is predicated around sponsorship and then prize money. And in our case, we are a sports or Formula One team that is racing against brands, teams with much bigger budgets than ours, sometimes 3 times the size of ours. So we race on 110 million sterling a year. The likes of Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull are operating on triple those budgets. So we're never going to be able to go out in the marketplace and try and find a £50 million, £100 million sponsor to try and match the budgets that our rivals have. So we have to be much cleverer around our partnerships and trying to get the maximum out of them. And that's, put the cash aside. It's about what can a brand bring to Williams to try and drive performance through our race team. So as you said, we've got a lot of partners now that we engage with across lots of different areas, away from just putting their logos on the car. So we're in BT, they're one of our partners, and actually the BT technologies that they've integrated into the racing side of our business have significantly enhanced our performance. So it's all around connectivity at the track, so being able to have engineers operating in our HQ, getting data, analysing it much quicker than we've ever been able to before, and then being able to transfer that data and knowledge back to the circuit for the guys who are operating the car's trackside. So that all helps performance, but it's product that they can integrate that doesn't actually mean taking out marketing dollars from that side of the business's budget. So for us, those kinds of partnerships are the ones that we're really looking for at the moment, the ones that can help drive performance by integrating product, but also drive performance through bringing cash into the door as well.
So you've actually moved up the grid because of your relationship with your sponsors?
But don't tell that to the 550 people working in our team. No, it's a combined effort. It's teamwork. There are 550 people that work just to get to our 2 race cars on the grid on our Sunday. But the work of the likes of BT, Avanade, those partners that are with us, even Unilever, we do some process work with them to take learnings from their business to see if we can take examples that they've done to speed up their business processes, etc. All that knowledge, the knowledge sharing, really helps drive performance in a racing team. It's
a very, very competitive business you're in, but at the moment, Mercedes wins everything. Do any of your partners say, I'm not sure I want to get involved with Williams because they're not going to win?
I've got some partners in the audience. No, they don't. And actually, we I don't know how much people know in the audience about Williams' recent history, but in 2013 we had the team's worst season in the sport that we've ever had. We finished 9th out of only 10 teams in the championship that year. But it was the year that we managed to bring Martini into the team as our title sponsor, and to be able to attract a brand like Bacardi into Formula One when you're doing that badly, I think says a lot about the marketing effort that we put into our partnerships at Williams. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't get sponsorship when you're doing badly, but it certainly doesn't help. Brands don't want to be associated with teams that are trailing at the back of the grid and not winning, particularly when so many brands have strap lines around winning performance. So we need to make sure that we're at the top end of the grid. But I think our partners, certainly over the past 2 years that have joined us, the likes of Unilever, BT, they want to see improvement in our team. They understand and know how competitive the environment is in which we're racing at the moment. And I think most of our partners will tell you that they're happy with where we are now. We've finished 2 consecutive seasons in 3rd place in the championship, which for a team like ours is a significant achievement and something that we're very proud of. But I think give us another 3 years, if we're still in 3rd, then I'm going to have partners knocking on the door saying, what's going on, why aren't you winning that? But yeah, because that's what we're here to do in our sport. We're here to win, we're not here to come 3rd.
Martin, is when you're deciding who you're going to go with, are you looking for winners? I mean, one of the things you've done with the Ryder Cup is, of course, it's a tournament, which doesn't really matter who wins to you, does it?
Well, it doesn't and it doesn't. I mean, ultimately, the greatest thrill that comes out of being associated with any sport is the end result. But I don't think the market really expects that we're an influence in terms of whether Darren Clark or Davis Love picks up the Ryder Cup in October. And I think in terms of that tournament, we're looking at that in terms of, I think, as a sports fan, obviously I would like Darren and the European team to win. But actually, I think for the health of the Ryder Cup franchise, a US win would be more beneficial. I think the US have been on such a losing streak in recent years that there is a danger that the power of the association is not as strong in the US going forward as it has been historically. So I think, very conscious of the end result, but also conscious that you know all of that before you get into the partnership. And I think we started out the day talking about Leicester. All things are possible in in sport, and that's part of the attraction as well. So not everybody can bet on the favourite.
I mean, interesting with Leicester, you know, King Power is now, we all know what King Power, well, do we know what they are? But we all know the brand, don't we? They went a different way about it by King Power bought the club in the first place. Are you ever tempted to do something like that?
Not at the moment. I mean, as I say, that's, you know, if that ever came along, I think that would be quite a big decision for us. I think in terms of an organisation, whilst we have nearly a 200-year corporate history, actually our involvement in sports sponsorship is relatively new, and I think we've had a fantastic first experience, and we're looking to an even more fantastic second experience, but I think we're probably some time away from a decision like that.
Chloe, you were speaking there about, you know, you're up against Mercedes, you're up against Ferrari, but you're also up against golf, you're up against rugby. And we were hearing this morning, you're up against e-games. You know, you're up against the whole of Wembley Arena selling out in 4 minutes. Does it get harder?
Yeah, every day it does get harder. I didn't even know what e-games were until you mentioned it to me.
Me neither.
Because it wasn't just me. Yeah, it does. There's so much competition nowadays, and you know, so you just, as I said earlier, you have to make sure that you're constantly innovating with your sponsorship platform.
So you have to be much more creative about what you can offer.
You do, yeah. I'm constantly challenging my guys when they're sending out a proposal. You know, we never send out, as I'm sure no other rights holder would, just a standard generic proposal. You have to truly understand the brands that you're talking to's business objectives. You have to go through those meetings for hours and hours and sit around a table and truly understand what their marketing objectives are, what they want to get out of a partnership, and making sure that you're blending your assets and merging them and trying to make those and sweat them for a partner, and make sure that you're encompassing every area of your business in order to meet a brand's objectives, and then hopefully you can form a partnership. And we're very lucky at Williams in that we've got, you know, lots of USPs, lots of, you know, a great story to sell. We've got the heritage. We've been in our sport for 40 years. Next year we've been racing. We're the third most successful team in Formula One. We're one of only 3 teams that's won 100 Grand Prix, but even that isn't enough. You know, the values that we have around integrity, honesty, a family business, it's still not enough. It's all about trying to keep innovating and keep evolving your sponsorship platform. So as an example of what we've done recently is we set up an advanced engineering business. So we're a Formula One team at our heart, but we have a wonderful business now which employs 200 people, which effectively takes the technologies and IP that we've learned in Formula One and commercialises them. So through advanced engineering, we have projects working in predominantly at the moment motorsport and automotive, but we're branching out into aerospace and defence. And this for us not only brings in a secure revenue stream, which will hopefully grow as the business evolves, but it also is a really effective side of our business that partners can come in and partner with. So the likes of the technology partners that we have are actually not more interested in partnering with advanced engineering, but actually find having the 2 strings to our bow a really attractive proposition. So it's doing things like that. It's keeping moving and keeping up and keeping it hopefully ahead of your competition. Is going to ensure that you attract those marketing dollars.
And Martin, I've just noticed over your head, I should say that Standard Life Investments are one of the gold sponsors of this event. Does the queue grow longer?
Well, the queue, yes, to be honest with you. I think, and also once you enter into this strange world of sports sponsorship, you enter into the sort of strange village which everybody here occupies, and suddenly you are connected to people that you didn't know existed before. So suddenly, once you participate, then the queue does get longer. But you know, that it's a nice problem to have in some ways. But it's still a decision at the end of the day from, you know, a business point of view in terms of, is it the right partnership? And in some ways, it's, you know, the sort of iceberg effect. What you see in terms of the sponsorship transaction, in terms of whether that's a name on a shirt or on a website, is only, you know, part of the story. You know, the sort of the activation that goes on outside of that sort of headline transaction often is where the real hard work and the real value comes from, and that's where innovation, either on the part of the rights holder but also on part of the brand, in terms of what opportunity does this partnership represent and how can we take it you know, into different areas of the business is part of the daily challenge that we have.
And we were talking about competition there. Presumably, you're in competition with other bits of the marketing budget as well, aren't you? I mean, does the board at the end of the year sit down and say, what have we got out of this sponsorship of the British Lions tour?
Yes, but they say that across all aspects of the marketing spend. So certainly from our organisation's point of view, we manage the marketing resource, both people, partnerships and activity budgets as one, and sponsorship sits within that. So it fights for attention with advertising, event management, digital build, and. So yeah, that's part of daily life, really. But yet we're an investment company, so we are constantly asked, is this good use of resource? Is this good use of spend? Could we do it better or differently? As I think in terms of what we've delivered to date, we feel very confident that we can build that case very strongly. But it is dependent on going beyond the badging transaction. It is taking the sponsorship as broadly as you can into all aspects of the business.
And Claire, one final thought from me, that you're in a business that's promoted largely on television, but you're not in control of who shows those pictures. If it suddenly changes and goes to a platform where you may be initially getting more money but fewer viewers, does that change your relationship with your sponsors? Did you get fear from that? You want to be on as big a platform as possible, presumably.
Yes, so one of the issues that we're facing in Formula One at the moment is this shift behind the pay TV wall. And, obviously in the UK, Formula One has just announced the deal to take the few races that we still have on Channel 4 now it's gone to. So free-to-air TV is going to, I think in 2019, it's going just behind the pay TV wall. And so we've seen a decline in our audience numbers in the UK alone by 49% this year, which is desperately sad for our sport. One of the key USPs we have when we're going out and selling is talking about the global reach, the audience numbers of, cumulative of 2 billion or something like that we have watching Formula One over the course of a 20-race season. So for us, that is such a powerful story to be able to go out and sell. But if we're going behind this wall now, that's going to make it a harder conversation for us to have, not just with the partners that we have within our community, but also with prospects. And to have that taken away is absolutely a worry for us. But then you need to, if that is happening, then you just have to work harder as a team to supplement the content for your fans, to make sure that you're reaching the fans and trying to keep that audience engaged with you. But those are real problems that our sport is facing at the moment. It's how do we not only retain the audience that we have based on new parameters and boundaries that are coming in, but also how do we try and engage a whole new generation of motorsport fans and interest coming in, with particularly the changing landscape around how Generation X and Y feel about cars in just from an automotive perspective as well. So it's a challenge that we're looking at.
What is your demographic at the moment? I mean, is it ageing?
Yes, it is slightly ageing, but we still have a really powerful demographic. It's ABC. We actually, very interestingly, and not many people would believe it, but our audience split in gender split is actually, the ratio of women watching it is growing. We have an audience split of, I think, 36% of our audience is actually females. Yet we don't have one single female brand sponsoring Formula One at the moment. So that's something that we're working hard to try and turn around and achieve.
You think that's a real missed opportunity?
It is, because we don't. We have more than 200 brands in Formula One that partner across teams and across Formula One management, so the sport, the group as a whole. Yet not one of them is singularly focused on selling to females. So, as a sport, that's something that we need to change. And
when you're, Martin, when you're looking at, the sport, you're looking at the Lions, do you look at where they're going to be exposed? Do you look at who's going to be showing the television broadcast? Yeah,
that's part of the due diligence, and you enter that with sort of open eyes. It would be delightful if all of this was on wall to wall BBC and ITV. But the value of elite sport is such that there is a bidding war in the world of media, and obviously people like BT are increasingly at that table, competing head to head. So I think the media world generally has become more complicated and more fragmented, as we heard earlier, in terms of sort of new trends emerging, even scarier going forward. So I think that comes back to the breadth of activities that you attach to any sponsorship has to go beyond that badging exercise in terms of what then appears on TV. That's headline stuff, and it's important. And in terms of the buying decision, it's very, very important. But it's the world is more complicated than that.
You said that you'd never heard of esports. You're now thinking, oh, maybe we should get involved in that.
Not thinking that. I'm just thinking I'm old.
I'm going to throw it open to the floor. Any questions for the panel? Yeah, gentleman there.
Michael Cole from True Gold Communications. Anti-bribery and corruption is having quite a detrimental impact on how sponsors run their activation programs, and particularly around client hospitality. We know that hospitality at Formula One isn't cheap. I'd like to hear the panel's views on the impact that it's having on our own partners' respective programs, and perhaps any workarounds that partners have in terms of maintaining that maximisation on their ROI.
Yeah, if anybody follows the Alex cartoon in the business section of the Daily Telegraph, they'll know that is, I think, the principal issue in banking at the moment, the corporate hospitality.
Yeah, so obviously these regulations came in a while ago now, and they were hugely worrying for us. But we engaged with our partners and tried to find, like you say, a kind of vague workaround for them. And so what we found has been very effective is to try and create a working environment around trackside hospitality. So a lot of what our partners will do is use the Friday of a Grand Prix weekend to host some kind of working session, seminar away from the track, and then they can tag on the Grand Prix experience of Saturday and Sunday off the back of that. And that's worked quite well. And actually it hasn't had probably as much of a negative impact as we were so concerned about it having when the regulations first came into play.
Martin, the Pro-Am round before the major golf is a big part of it, isn't it?
Less and less so, and in some cases not at all. I think we understand those tram lines, and they're there for sound reasons. They're there to protect the consumer, certainly in the financial services arena. You don't want to be receiving critical financial advice from somebody who's been influenced because they've had a nice day at the racetrack or whatever. So we have very clear lines between who we would involve in actual participation at an event. I'll say,
so how do you do that? How do you differentiate them?
Certainly anybody that is facing off to a customer, we would not engage in sort of high value hospitality. Hospitality is part of the mix, but I think it's less important than it used to be. It's still an important part, but it's less so than it used to be. We're a global organisation. We're partnering with global franchises. These things apply differently in different parts of the world, so we need to be cognizant of that. But I think if you start with the position that they exist for sound reason, so it's certainly not about accommodating or trying to get around them. It is understanding them, because they don't just apply to sports sponsorship; they apply to everything that we do as a business. And I think again, the risks of getting it wrong far outweigh any short-term opportunity you might get from taking the wrong person into a hospitality environment.
Have you ever got it wrong?
Me, no.
Any other questions?
Hi, Chris from Synergy again. We've spoken a lot about how sponsorship is having to fight its corner quite hard. There's a lot of demand from managers asking for ROI figures and asking to see sponsorship actually fight its corner for the marketing budget. And ROI is often a term used quite loosely. I'd be interested to learn about how you both actually define return on investment and go about measuring it, and Claire in particular, how you showcase ROI, whether that be in financial terms or not, to brands and potential sponsors.
Claire.
So, across all of our different partnerships, every brand has a different reason for being in partnership with Williams. And so what we just have to make sure we're doing at the end of every year is making sure that we're meeting those. And So a couple of examples from my side would be Unilever. Their partnership crosses a variety of different elements of relationship within the team, but one of those is a sustainability program that we're doing with them, and it's really at the heart of their partnership with us. And this is all around various divisions within Unilever, working within various divisions within Williams around health and safety, manufacturing, etc. And those teams work together over the course of the year in order to get learnings from each other and try and improve speed of process, agility, flexibility and efficiency in working. And so really it's then up to their C-suite exec to meet at the end of the year to decide whether those programs, the areas of project work within those areas have been fruitful. So a very strange example is a project that we've done with Unilever across their washing powder production process, which I never thought that Williams would be involved in, but we have some very clever technologies within the advanced engineering side of our business that they've integrated into this project piece that they've been doing in order to, when you're making washing powder, you lose a lot of energy in these great big spray dry cooling towers, and the technologies that we have at Williams has helped recapture that energy, and which saves obviously electricity bills for Unilever, helps their speed of process, etc. So that for them is a key mark of having been able to achieve success in just one small piece of project work that we've done with them has saved Unilever hundreds of thousands of pounds in just 1 year of partnership with the team. So that for them is a success story that they're happy with. You look at Martini, for example, one of the reasons that they're in partnership with us is to raise the brand awareness of their drinks brand around the world, and obviously to sell bottles. So whenever they're having a board meeting, I'm there waiting for the phone call that says, and has revealed and said whether they've had a 10%, 20%, 30% uplift in their sales. And Martini last year had a 30% increase in their sales, which they say is solely due to their partnership with Williams. So for me, that is a measure of success. That means to me that my marketing team have done exactly what they need to do to drive return on investment. So it's really just about understanding what the objectives are and making sure that you're working really hard. But for us, it's not just about meeting them, it's about going above and beyond and surpassing their expectations.
Martin.
Well, in terms of return on investment, it's not necessarily a sales return in the immediate effect, because we're a large and institutional business. Our relationships take a long time and they're very complicated to land. But we operate a sort of balanced scorecard approach. So certainly in terms of the brand side of thing, we would have targets against those big numbers in terms of anticipated reach and cut through and so on. But more intimate and I guess sort of within the business measures around which clients we've engaged in, how we track their perception of the firm in the round and how the sponsorship is played back within that, and then also from an employee perspective, given that's a large part of what we're doing in this space, how engaged our people are with the sponsorship. So it's certainly not a single return on investment measure. It is really more a discipline and a scorecard approach.
Claire, can I ask a dumb question? How did Martini know that it was their relationship with you that spiked the sales?
Because we are their only sponsorship platform. They use Williams as pretty much their sole marketing sponsorship factor.
So there's the advantage of having a unique relationship.
There you go.